What is up, everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Charlie Shrem, your host, and you're listening to another epic episode of Untold Stories, where twice a week we get to dive deep with some of crypto's most influential leaders, Bitcoin OGs, filmmakers, politicians, brilliant people, those who have turned trauma into success, those who have turned their creativity. I was actually thinking about this in the bathroom today. I was like, all the kids who are successful today, I follow a lot of my friends from high school and stuff. It's all like the stupid, fat, and ugly kids, myself included, who have become successful. So congratulations to all of us, all of you. And it's really cool too, because I've been starting to get into filmmaking recently, and my listeners know. And what's really cool is that through my filmmaking world is how I met you guys. So it all brings it back. These worlds are kind of merging it all together. I want to give a little bit of background. So first of all, Lex and Arel, thank you guys for coming on the show. Did I pronounce your name the right way?
Arel. Yeah.
Arel.
Yeah.
Arel, thank you so much.
It's like Daryl without a D.
Thanks for coming on Untold Stories today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really it's our pleasure, brother.
Arel, you are a film entrepreneur and video producer. You've been doing film and marketing and with your brother Lex, that we have on the show today. You guys have been running 3 Division, which is a next level studio for doing visual interactive content. You guys have invented this super cool metaverse platform called Passage. And then not only with that, but you took what you built and you launched Strange Clan, which I was spending a lot of time on this morning. And this is what's really cool, is that unfortunately, a lot of people that I'm doing research for the show that I want to come on, a lot of people are just talking about doing things. People are talking about the future. This is what we're talking about doing. This is what we want to build, et cetera, et cetera. When we got in touch through our mutual friend, Ron Newcomb, what really excited me is you guys are like doing it. You're not just talking about something. And then at the same time, you've built an engine that without having to download any browser extensions, any downloadable anything, you allow people in browser to build on and have access to this like crazy 3D world of audio that comes up behind you and presentations and video chat, top quality graphics. It's truly immersive experience, 360-degree video, no learning curve, so anyone can use it. And then you built Strange Clan on top of that. So kind of like, shit, where do we start? There's crypto, there's the 3D world, there's the metaverse world, there's the beauty of Bitcoin. Like, where do you guys want to start? Just tell us a little bit of background.
Yeah, let's dive in. So I'm gonna kick it over to Lex real quick. So we met through Charlie, you and I connected through Ron, who is back in the day. I was a filmmaker, and a lot of what me and Lex, had really enjoyed doing was writing and creating. Coming up through the ranks of being freelancers for a long time, picking up clients, we talked back and forth about things that we were trying to accomplish, and eventually Lex started to get more and more into kind of the 3D development side of things. So both between doing like 3D design and then also starting to do some development for clients. So I'm going to kick it back over to Lex and say, hey, he's got kind of like the first like part to the story.
Yeah. So it kind of started with 3 Division, which I started in 2017. So like 5 years ago now. And before that, I just gotten fired from my graphic design job and went home, cried to my wife and was like, I failed, it was terrible. I wasn't working hard enough because I didn't.
He cried to me too.
Yeah, I did.
Sounds like it was traumatic.
A lot of crying going on. And it was difficult because I now had this freedom, right? And I'd done freelance stuff before, but it was good, right? So faced a bunch of challenges through that phase, developing kind of what was my own creative offering going to be, how I was going to take these tools. And I was just getting into 3D. I'd been doing 3D for really only a few months. But I felt like that was what was going to distinguish the type of work that we were doing. So, by the grace of God, over the next year or so, we developed a really unique set of skills in doing 3D animation. And all throughout this process, me and Arel have been collaborating for a long time. And basically, he was the one that I came to and I was like, I don't know where to get another client, right? We're broke. What do I do now? How do I problem solve this? And we'd kick around ideas. And Arel has always been He's had a lot of the the way we would describe it is that I have style and Arel has strength, like that. Basically, I'm the the salesman, the like. There's a lot of the pretty face that I put forward, and Arel's always been the example and just getting down to the grind and pushing forward, right? And so he always helped me to kind of get through roadblocks. We come up with creative solutions and stuff like that together. And so that was kind of our collaborative process over the years. But basically, a big shift in what we were doing came when we started applying 3D to doing. We got some really interesting contracts with some people who are designing events, like real world events. And this was for big brands like Warner Brothers, Capitol Records. We worked with Red Bull, Dallas Cowboys, Disney, Marvel. And what we were doing was the virtual component of the real world event, right? We would help visualize the event. We'd help plan the event. We would help
Pokemon Go AR style.
Kind of, yeah. We do 3D renders, and we did actually do some work with Niantic.
Oh, that's so
developed cool. Pokemon Go. Yeah.
But so fundamentally, it was the 3D renders for the guys who are going to go create the physical version of it.
Right.
And so they could all visualize it and see the pieces of it. But then this exact same client, let's flash forward to 2020 pandemic hits. These events that were happening that all these pieces got created for, they were no longer happening anymore. And the main company that was basically thriving off of these events came to Lex and was like, hey, how do we problem solve around this? And then Lex pretty much pitched well, why don't you do virtual events? And I don't know how much you had already thought through this, because I remember you and I talked about it. So I don't remember when you had that conversation with Jason, actually.
Yeah. So it was interesting because, we'd been doing the virtual component of physical events for so long. And these were events that got executed in Hollywood, on Hollywood and Vine Street. Generally, there's a big lot there where they'd build these multi-million-dollar activations for Warner Brothers for we did stuff for It Too, for the Lego movie. And, basically it was so wrapped up in the physical that when, the worldwide chaotic event happened, basically they were like, what do we do? Right. And things started to dwindle in terms of work that was available. And so I put together a whole pitch where I was like, this is what it should look like. Right. Because I could see the way that people were doing virtual at the time, because everyone was trying to do virtual, but it was Zoom calls. It was Zoom calls with it's we're back in the 90s, right? With dialogue, chat, whatever. And it's this isn't an event, right? This is just, talking to your grandma on the phone, equivalent of, today's standard. And it was not organic, right? It was very arbitrary, right? You're going to have a set number of people who can be heard by other people. And so it's being able to listen in on somebody else's conversation, kind of, right? But there's very little interaction. There's no sense of space. And that was what we wanted to change. And so, very early on, we were pitching this concept, and our first big event was with Amazon. And the idea was you need to be able to look around, right? And this was something that blew people's minds when they first hopped in. For one, nobody is expecting to click on a link and suddenly be in a 3D world, right? And so that blew people because they're expecting you got to download stuff. You got to there's got to be an app. You got to have a computer that's all glowy and whatnot. And so there were huge limitations to having something that looked good, that was realistic. And then they'd get in and be like, oh, cool. This looks really nice. And you tell them okay, click and drag to look around. This is a space. Oh, this is 3D. I can actually look around the space. And then they would turn, and you would be our first space that we designed was a theater. It was a Batcave style theater that we were pitching to Warner Brothers. And you turn around and be like, oh, you're behind me, right? You're right there. And that was this realization that people would have. And that sense of space was what people were noticing.
I think the concept of space in an online environment is still very difficult for people to understand. And I think that maybe it's that our brain capacity doesn't have the ability to do it yet, but the Ready Player One style metaverse, I mean, we saw that in Second Life in the 90s. You said, that's not what the metaverse is going to be, or Web3. So a lot of those we're going to be in these worlds and here, or just ignore it. No, there's going to be a relationship, and it's going to be complementary. And it seems like that's kind of the path that you guys, or the passage that you guys are going down. See
Well,
what I
what
did
was
there?
really
Yeah.
interesting was we were facing two dynamics. You would have people who were trying to take the VR approach, where it's like, oh, total immersion. We're trying to create this, whatever. And unfortunately, even in that scenario, you took a lot of like the human element out of it because people would be looking at an avatar, right? In VR, you're not looking at somebody's face; you're looking at an avatar. So you lost some, personal element there. But then on the other side of things, and the problem with VR was that people trying to do that didn't factor in that most people can't hop into a VR experience because like 1% of people have a VR headset, right? So huge limitations. It's not accessible. And then on the other side of things, you had people who were just doing the Zoom call, right? And so it's
Yep.
like glorified video chat is your event, right? And so it was finding that this accessible space, right? You can get in with just a link, right? That also gave people that immersion and that personality, which was our 3D video chat, where you could look around and see somebody next to you, and somebody could see you looking around. Like this idea that like right now, if I were to be like, oh, Arel is right there, and I were to point in the video call, it's not, I mean, for somebody watching, maybe the video feeds are rearranged, right? Or maybe like, you know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of factors where that's not going to be the experience for everybody in the room, right? You don't
Yeah.
know if somebody's seeing you on top or whatever. There's no real conception of where people are or even who's talking to some extent because we're all the exact same video size, whatever. There's no organic experience to it. And so we wanted to make something where I could point to somebody and everyone can see that I'm looking at them or I'm looking at you.
Oh, that's
like,
cool.
yeah, and there's this actual sense of space because you're actually 3D avatars. And when I say avatar, it's a avatar with a video feed on it, right? So you feel like when you turn to look at somebody, you're actually face to face. And when they turn to look at somebody else, they're not looking at you anymore. So you can kind of like relax, like you can pick your nose, like you're not being stared at because you're not the speaker right now. Like there's a sense of attention.
This creates the next level, when it comes to socioeconomics and doing a business deal with someone. Sometimes, like, if I'm having a conversation with you and I pick my nose, that could break the deal. Or if we're all pointing at someone,
Yep.
but we're talking about really these worlds that incorporate social dynamics and
Yeah, right.
and incorporate Arel, and like what was missing with technology beforehand that we couldn't do this up until now? And then like how does token economics and like DeFi and how does that all kind of get involved in the realm of like again like social dynamics?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll push the token question to Errol, but real quick on the technology question, to some extent, it is really interesting. What we're building that's totally unique is the infrastructure, the video infrastructure. We're building a custom for the technical people who care. It's WebRTC. So there's like a common foundation of like a video language at the base of this that people are using to make stuff like Zoom, right? But the problem is it hasn't been developed to be organic, where basically if you with this, it's great. This is great for having 10 people talking to each other. And then maybe like 200 or 1,000 people watching us talk to each other. But when you actually get in a room in a 3D space where you're expected to be able to walk around and see and hear anybody you interact with, right? See their video, hear them talking like around you, like there's spatialized audio. So you can hear people who are behind you and it sounds like they're behind you, like this kind of like surround sound style effect. And for that to work, you need to be able to switch between the different video feeds much more organically. So, but there's no demand for that until you take the video communication and put it into a 3D setting, right? And that was kind of the missing piece in a lot of ways. And it's not that the pieces weren't there before, but there was nobody trying to fit these pieces together in the way that we were, because we're trying to emulate real world communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't it. So we were like, okay, what would it look like? And so we're putting pieces together that already exist, but then realizing kind of some of the inherent failures of the existing infrastructure and technology because it couldn't keep up with the kind of organic way that we're switching between feeds. Basically, you try to do what we're doing right here with 100 people, 100 video feeds, 100 audio feeds, and it would just basically blow up, right? Because you'd be managing so much bandwidth, whatever. And so we've had to build some custom tools to make that possible, to have these more organic interactions with audio and video in a 3D space where it feels natural.
Yep. And kind of like on the, you talked about tokenomics and like how does crypto sort of factor into this? You also brought up Ready Player One. Ready Player One is interesting because the things that people do in this virtual space matter. Whereas right now in a game, and it doesn't matter, it's all monopoly money, right? We've never up to this point had the ability to own digital things, case in point. And I was it's funny, you try to have these conversations on Twitter. And unless you're in a Twitter space where you actually have back and forth dialogue potentially, it's really hard to get this out. And I was trying to explain to this one guy who was like, oh, this has always been, we've always had this already within games. There's nothing new coming to the table. And I was like, all right, if you go to Steam right now and you try to buy a game, Steam technically still owns that game because you can't once you've bought it, you can't take it out of your Steam library. You can't sell it back to Steam unless you're trying to do a return, and it has to be
or sell it to another user.
And you can't sell it to another user. And so you can't do what you used to be able to do with the physical copy of the game, like sell it on Amazon, sell it to a third party. All the things that people would do with physical copies of a game. We've lost that now that we've gone to a full push into digital. So just having the ability to, take true ownership of the things that you have in your library, you could do whatever you want with it. Just having that ability suddenly is a huge step away from what we had in traditional, gaming, the traditional gaming world, and even just traditional digital product ownership, and way more in the direction of making things that people do in games matter. And that's kind of what we're trying to bring to Strange Clan, which is an MMORPG. It's action based, but one of the biggest factors about it is that it's going to have we're crafting out this in-game economy that's truly built around people going out, gathering resources, crafting, and then doing quests, and everybody having, just like you do in a modern marketplace, you have people who all have different objectives, different things that they're trying to accomplish. And so trading with one another, especially trading, one specialist trading with another specialist. I'm a specialist in crafting this particular armor. I'm a specialist in crafting mechanical items that make it easy to set traps or whatever. I'm a hunter. I'm a huge gatherer. I gather tons of different resources. All those guys come together. They start trading with each other. Now you have a real economy because the hunter needs the trapper, right? And then the trapper might need the guy who's great at blacksmithing, right? All to advance in the game. And they don't have to exchange money. They could just be exchanging resources if they want to. But fundamentally, you're doing things that matter. And that's way more in the direction of this like Ready Player One element.
What you just described is the perfect definition of play to earn, because it's not a new idea. Going back to, oh my God, like Grand Theft Auto for me, like I would pay for save game files just to skip halfway through the game because I wanted to just play the maps. I didn't want to. I love the storyline too. I would beat the game. I beat it once. I don't want to keep doing it. And then you get a game. So the concept, those were with single storyline games. Then World of Warcraft was a watershed moment for the gaming industry because for the whole world.
Yeah.
Because it really accelerated that play to earn. But again, it was a walled garden. You're earning. What are you supposed to do with it? Can't make it money. I remember one of the first people who understood Bitcoin, like I never had to explain it to him, was this guy, Frank. I met him in Austria, and in 2011, he ran, still around, this like exchange to trade Second Life Linden dollars and then euros or dollars. And he was exchanging Bitcoin for Second Life Linden dollars back in 2012 because there was a market for it. People in game wanted to get their money out. And was like, wow, that was for me a big light bulb moment too. But what is the world? Everyone listening right now has probably read a negative article against play to earn. It's not going to work. The bots are going to take it over. Whenever I see that as an opportunity. If everyone's saying it's bad, for me, it's like, shit, this is something I should invest in. What are we getting wrong about it? What is the media getting wrong?
Oh my gosh, there's a bunch of things.
I've answered this question. Yeah, I've answered this question a bunch of times. Lex, you go first, because I have my thoughts. I think we're probably thinking very similarly on this.
Yeah, and part of the problem is that people are making DeFi. They're not making a game, right? Like half the people who are building play to earn, they're not building a game. They're building a money-making mechanism or a Ponzi scheme, at best, right? And so it's like, just build a game. Just build a game. Just make a good game, right? And this is the problem, is that most of the real solid titles that exist right now haven't implemented this, right? It's like you can't. It's like the only reason that adding blockchain to these digital assets is worthwhile is if people care to own those things. Blockchain gives you true verifiable ownership on a public ledger, right, of these digital assets. But what if I don't care to own this, little nonsense PFP that somebody made? Then it doesn't matter, right? We need to implement blockchain where people already care about the content. That's why when we started building Strange Clan, the goal was not to get as fast as possible to a Ponzi scheme. It was to make stories and characters that people care about, right? If you can create the emotional investment first, then people have a desire to own, right? And it's a Ponzi scheme as long as people are only doing it to try and get up the pyramid, right? And as soon as they have some value, they bail on the tokens, they bail on the characters, the assets. Then it's just a perpetual dump of value, and the last person in is always going to lose, right?
So the way I've described this is basically, if everybody has the exact same goal, which is to get money, then you don't have the right game.
Right.
It's not a fun game. And that's also why people worry about bots, is because everybody has been playing predictable games that all had the same goal, the same end state, which is just get more money, grow your money. Whereas, the objective with Strange Clan is that you're going to have many different game goals. You'll have those who do want to take this investor path. And so they're buying things up that are on the marketplace and trying to trade and flip them. They might be trying to buy in-game property, all of that. But there's a player base that has different goals. Those goals would be, community oriented. I want to get higher up in my personal guild. I want to build one of the biggest clans. I want to complete the story. I want to get this particular item that I saw this one dude have, right? Or I want to make every single weapon that's on the map. You're going to have everybody have different goals and objectives. And also because they each of the characters in the classes have different strengths, you're going to have, and the way that people get to those classes is through an organic method of playing, and wherever you are playing, wherever you're spending the most time is where your skill points are being acquired. And so naturally the game makes your class something that you tend to lean towards anyway. Like your desired play style, the thing that you find fun, ends up becoming your class. You end up naturally shifting over into that direction. And so your play style is going to put you in a class. People are going to identify, hey, I need these types of classes in my party so that we can go accomplish this thing. So everybody has each individual ideas of what their goal is, because this person wants to be the best medic. This person wants to be the best hunter. This person wants to be the best knight. This person wants to be the best bard. Bards are going to be really interesting, actually. But anyway,
it seems like it's a perfect lever system, like the episode of The Simpsons where he's like pulling one lever up and the other one goes down or whatever. It's a perfect, you're sitting here. You have to you have an economics hat, you have a token economics hat, you have you want to be like an anthropologist. You have all these different things that you have, but the beauty of it is that the people are the ones forging this, right? You have this game. You have passage, you have very light, just like these are kind of the rules. And then, like you said, it's if everyone's in it for the money, then it's not going to be fun. It seems like it's a complementary type of thing. Is this kind of your answer if I were to ask you what the danger is of these, like if passage became a private, obviously you'd want a big company to buy it out because it would be great. But if someone were to build this and it was like a walled garden, it's closed, if Facebook or Meta owned all of these metaverses, is that the danger? And you just can't throw shit at the wall to see what's going to stick.
Well, and there's no experimentation at that point. Because the whole goal of this is, I got to plug a few elements of our infrastructure here. For one, we're building on Cosmos, right? Which they have IBC, it's interblockchain communication
Great
layer.
ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. And what that allows us to do is every Passage world, right? You can boot up a Passage world, and one of the projects on Cosmos is Akash. It's decentralized cloud computing. So when you boot up a world, we're going to get a point in our roadmap where that all the hosting power that goes into hosting that world is decentralized. So it's censorship resistant. It's resistant to centralized infrastructure failure, right? And it's resistant to us as one of the creators on the Passage platform being like, well, I don't want you to have a voice, I'm going to take that down, right? We can't. It's not hosted on our servers or Amazon servers. It's hosted in a decentralized way, right? So that's one element that's going to that with the value add of the decentralization layer, right? But then also, because it's built on Cosmos, you can take different assets across different worlds, right? Strange Clan is one world.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about Passage is gaming is the smallest part of I think the user base for Passage. I think it'll be significant. And there's a lot of really cool applications, but we weren't originally building this for gaming. It's a really exciting consumer application. Well, we were originally building it for events, right? We were doing entertainment and events with these large brands on Amazon, Capitol Records, American Girl, Scooter Braun.
Can I do untold stories over Passage? It'd be like
absolutely.
a full immersive experience for people to come in, join, hang out.
Yes.
We were actually talking about doing our so we have a podcast called We Build Worlds, and we were talking about doing our podcast. One of the early goals of Passage will be to have our own studio area where we're doing the podcast. Right now, we were basically chasing after some other goals, so that's still on the back burner.
I'm in with it.
Very excited about that.
I want to have a world. I don't want a Discord or Telegram room. People are like, why don't you start a Discord room? It's like stupid. I don't want to start a Discord room. How many Discord rooms are you in right now? It's like too many.
Yeah.
It's like Slack. No, I want to be in a cool world that provides like value add, but fun, different, exciting, but you can hear behind you and you're immersed.
Right.
A lot of these, like, it brings me back. I used to play Unreal Tournament 2004 and I was in a clan, and just hanging out in the audio room and just let other people talk, and I'm just in there learning. That was the original fun. My early Bitcoin days, there was this TeamSpeak called Whalepool, and it's a huge Telegram room now, like 50,000 people. But originally, Whalepool was just a TeamSpeak of people doing crypto stuff. But it's like the little tidbits and the stuff. It's like, oh shit, look what's happening. Everyone going,
right.
That's fun. I want that back. I want that world back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something organic. Absolutely. No, we need to make that happen. Even we'll get an episode of Untold Stories in Passage for sure. And that's the thing, is there's so much openness to what you can build there, and it's just all about organic interaction and communication.
Can anyone build, or do you need to be like a developer or game designer?
Our roadmap is moving. Yeah, exactly. Our roadmap is moving toward that. Right now, technically, the kind of crawl, walk, run of the stages that we're building through. Right now, we are kind of the only agency that can build Passage worlds, but our goal is to get to the walk stage where we have an open SDK and open source tooling where any development team or anybody with Unreal experience could boot up a Passage world in a decentralized way, and it would have seamless connections with all the other Passage worlds via IBC. So your assets, your relationships, and your identity move seamlessly across any Passage world. So that tooling is our first step. But then the next step will be a easily accessible design interface, right? Kind of like SaaS style, where somebody can go to a website, right? And drag and drop assets from the Passage marketplace, right? And this is a big value add for our marketplace as well, is that we're incorporating 3D data into the NFTs so they can be used inside Passage, right? Your characters could be used as avatars. Items that you design or your friends design can be minted as NFTs and used in Passage worlds. We'll have templates for people to design an office, because actually that's one of the ways that we use Passage heavily every day is with our team meeting and collaboration. Like, we're literally in our own software every single day. Again, one of the biggest differences between us and a lot of the other solutions out there is that we use it, right? Again, like you said, this is something that we're using. So so
we always
goal is like that because in the Zoom world. No, sorry, Arel, what were you saying?
Well, I was going to say that we've always had to, because literally from the very beginning, we've always had to sell, this, like when one of the first few events that we did for Passage was one for Amazon, one for or two for Capitol Records, and then one for American Girl. And it was always trying to sell, where we wanted to take this tooling and this platform, and what it is that the concept that we were trying to drive forward. We've always had to work towards what is actually workable today versus always talking about the tomorrow, the
Right.
future, the dream, right? So to come back full circle to your point before that, it's not about theory, it's about execution. That's kind of what we're aiming for.
Well, you need to have a vision, but you also need to have like some way to test that vision, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that's the benefit that we've had is we started off super broke, right? And so we had to test the vision in the quickest way possible, right? Because we only had so much funds, right? We were never independently fund. I mean, we got all our funds from actually doing events, right, and using
Yeah.
the software. So if it wasn't useful, if it wasn't sellable or marketable, then it couldn't exist.
Why did you guys decide to build out of all games? Why Strange Clan? Why a massive
Great
a massive
question.
multiplayer online role playing game? It's like, and for those who don't know, these are not like single player games or even these are where you have in real time you have millions of different storylines and people interacting with each other. It's talk about crawling before you could walk. You chose the most difficult thing.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that it's very similar to how the problems we already had to solve for Passage. So everything that Lex was talking about, as far as like managing organic communication, has already been stuff that is well trotted territory in the MMORPG world. Managing servers, trying to make that experience organic, managing, when does your audio connect with their audio. They never had to do video, and that's why we don't have solutions that fundamentally work with Passage, and why we had to build our own solutions. But a lot of those pieces were already there, and so the other side of it too is that when you think about the idea of owning digital assets, we oftentimes don't refer to Strange Clan as a play to earn game. We refer to it as a play to own game, because literally everything that we are doing is leading towards people making things in the game that matter, that they can then own. And so some of the reason why we chose MMORPG, an MMORPG genre, is that ultimately, like, that's what MMOs do really well, is they really like lay the groundwork for these big economies that are very, very exciting and actually make the things in the game matter. So, me and Lex tend to personally lean heavy in the direction of RPGs. And there's like very few MMORPGs that really like, get us excited. So I think another part of it too was, we've always liked the idea of MMORPGs. I think one of, both of our favorites from back in the day was RuneScape.
Yeah, of
It's really
course.
hard
Oh,
to make. Yeah. Yeah. It's really hard to get that same, level of immersion and game balance and all of that. RuneScape did it epically, and they're still running today. It's amazing. Ultimately, we wanted to become, we wanted to make that thing that we always wanted to see exist that doesn't yet exist.
I'm just thinking going back from when we were kids, like some of my best friends were the ones who came over to play Halo at a LAN party. And then like,
Yes.
like
Yes.
my best friend at school, we played Counter-Strike Source together. It's so much of my early childhood like maturity development was around games. And I'm wondering
It's the
if there was
challenges we face together.
yeah, we face challenges together. Isn't that
Yep.
something?
It's like going into
Yeah.
battle, right? It's like, I mean, the same thing happens around sports teams, right? But it's like, it's different kinds of challenges, right? It's tactical, it's mental, it's emotional, spiritual challenges, depending on the story that you're conquering or you know what I mean? And so like the people that you go through that with, you come out kind of like with a mutual appreciation for each other, as well as, kind of this common experience, right? Of suffering
Yeah.
when you lose or of victory.
Those who have been in the military get it. One of my friends who I was in prison with, our relationship, no one will ever understand just because
Yep.
no one has ever been through that, except for him and I in the same place at the same time. And so like, it's interesting how that kind of all comes together and bringing it back. We haven't done it though, but tell us about Strange Clan because a lot of the listeners are probably like want to learn more about that specific game. What type of
Yeah.
quests are you doing? You go on the website, it's beautiful. You guys put together amazing work. Huge
That's really
following.
kind of you, because we definitely
The
don't
website's
think
behind.
super highly about it. We think
Really?
it's
No,
a terrible looking website. We're
Well,
working on it
okay,
though.
okay.
I thought
Yeah,
it was a
it's
product of its like that's because that's what the game looks like. The website is like it reminds me of like an old German town that I want to go hang out at.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
A lot
and
of
there,
the a lot of the artwork has come a long way.
right
We'll have to, so if you spend any time on the Strange Clan Twitter, you'll oftentimes see us posting
concept art.
the concept art that's coming out. Our concept art team is just absolutely phenomenal and have been like a huge part of like helping to lead the way. And I should actually plug Nick Operator is who he is on Twitter, who just is an excellent like creative visionary. He
He's our
did
creative
all the
director.
NFTs. Yeah, he's a creative director. He did all of our NFTs, but then went back to the drawing board when it came to the style and design of the game, because we started talking about what are these going to look like in 3D, and ultimately we settled on this idea that the NFTs are more like the Funko Pop version of the 3D characters,
Well,
because we wanted more customization of the characters, we wanted more varied looks, and we wanted them to also play. We wanted the theme of the story to take a slightly different tone than what you get directly out of the NFTs. What were you gonna say, Lex?
yeah, and I like thinking about it in terms of like the original Pokemon cards too, the way
Yeah.
the visual style is developed. Where like if you remember that classic Pikachu card where he's kind of like fat and square and like
Yeah,
just a little
jumping.
bit different. Yeah, than the Pikachu that would developed as the show went on and as the IP developed. For us, it's like it's meant to be an organic evolution, right? I mean, we've already created layers to this painting, to this visual style that's developing, because for us, it really is about the journey with the community, right? And so there's an important artifact in the style of the NFTs, but there will also be stages along the way. Like for one, we're developing a 2D game that will actually be very like ARPG,
Oh, that's
Pokemon, Final
cool.
Fantasy style.
Yeah.
And that's a precursor. It's called the prologue, right? It's a precursor to the 3D game because we want to launch something this year that people can use their NFTs to interact with and do quests and engage with the story. But we know that this bigger 3D game, the chapter one experience, is a much bigger goal, right? So we want to keep people involved and engaged throughout the process. And we've done some like community events inside Passage, which is cool because we can already bring people into the 3D worlds and show people kind of like what this experience can be like. But we want a game. We want a complete story that people can interact with. And in terms of developing the story, it's been a really fun, creative journey. And part of the reason that we wanted to make this game was because it's about story, right? It's about characters. We've already done these kind of like fun social quests inside Discord where the mechanics are really simple. They're just based off of like,
Yeah.
gating.
But this is like filmmaking, Arel, this is
Right.
like your jam too. So it's like you guys get to work together, you get to do all these
Yep.
different things, and kind of amalgamate all the different.
Our goal in every entrepreneurial venture that we have ever done has always been, okay, how do we get to the place where we can tell stories? Because we've been crafting stories together ever since we were kids, and so it's just been an ongoing process of like, all right, how do we get to the place where we're telling stories? And so that's another reason why when Lex says that the game part of it is like we think ultimately going to be a small part of the greater expansion of Passage. That's only to say how big Passage is. We started with the games because we think that games are a very easy and accessible way for people to conceptually understand one, metaverses and how they can be experienced, how they can create community, because a lot of that's already there. And then two, there's just the utility side of NFTs is very, very accessible when we talk about games. So yeah. One of the, so you also mentioned the what is the game, what are the quests like, and all of that. So the 3D MMORPG game, the way that we're looking at quests is very much like I was describing before, where you have quests that will help influence the world, but also you have quests that basically just continue to help your own personal journey. Whether that's you're trying to go down a certain part of your skill tree so that you can either get your class or something like that, or you are working with your guild or your clan. So guilds are like, the collection of classes, and clans are the collection of people. So players can self-organize clans, and guilds are kind of like the in-game, like, hey, all of us are medics. So we all have this medic guild that we're going to. There's certain resources within the medic guild. So once you get to the place in your medic skill tree, you finally come to the place where you can actually apply to be in the guild, get accepted into the guild, and then have access to some of the things that are within the guild. So ultimately, everything is the quests basically are like this branching tree where you have some player-driven quests where players, kind of demand things of each other. Like, hey, I need these items. You can put it up on a job board. Somebody get me these items. And some of those items might be things that are just gathering items, and certain classes do much better at gathering those types of resources. They might be items that need to be crafted. And then when you have all those things, the player who needed those things might be ultimately trying to actually build something bigger with each of these elements. So, we look at crafting kind of like a layered approach, so that you actually might craft subparts to be a much bigger craftable item. Very similar to how games like Minecraft function, and other very crafting focused games.
If you gave a task that was the same task that my school teacher gave me, I would do it in the game over doing it on my homework, which leads me to like the point where during COVID, everyone was worried about how Zoom is shit and we need to go back to the classrooms. If we had this, if my classroom was in Passage, we'd see a hybrid in-person and then in-Passage school system, which would be better than the full-time in-classroom system, but half the cost. And at the same time, like their kids are never, it's like, that's what I'm in.
Are you familiar with the upside down classroom?
No, tell me about it.
It's a concept that I've heard multiple educators talk about. I don't know why I got obsessed with education. I almost became a teacher. But basically the concept is that instead of, you listen to a lecture from your teacher at school, and then go home and do the homework, instead you flip it. You say, hey, we're going to do the homework at class, because then you have time with the teacher and with the other students to ask questions, to kind of problem solve together. And then when you go home, you watch a video, because the lectures that teachers do are identical every single time. They're regurgitating the same information. I realized this, and this is why I didn't become a teacher. I was literally going to school for this. I shadowed my teachers from school, and they all said like the exact same things from when I was in high school, as they were saying to the kids that were in class that day. I was like, oh, being a teacher, a lot of times you are saying the same things over and over again. But meanwhile, it's the same energy every single time. You have to bring the same energy. And so why don't you just turn that into a recording? Because ultimately you're delivering it the same every single time. So why don't you turn that into a recording and then sit with the kids and actually be there with them to answer questions, so they can get the first layer of information. And then when they're actually in class, then they can deal with the questions. Then they can deal with all the other elements to it.
Yeah, we think it's like a given now, but the idea of showing up to class and not even know what you're going to be learning that day, that was our education system. It's so stupid.
Yeah. Well, we definitely want to target, again, this is a platform for organic communication. So education is huge. For us, a big part of why we want to structure it the way that we have is accessibility, right? You shouldn't have prohibitive barriers to entry, like having to have specific hardware or having to have access to, different applications. Like, we want somebody to be able to like go on a library computer, type in a link, and then they're in the experience.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Or from any device, right? From the laptop your school gave you, or an iPad, like, or your parents' phone, being able to hop into a classroom, right? And not only education, but also like work advancement opportunities, like being able to reach people in like underrepresented areas where they might have access to a digital location and be able to have
Yeah.
a better work experience or interaction with interviews or with work advancement or education opportunities, right? Where they might not have access to that physically in their physical location, right? So being able to reach people in all sorts of different areas just because there's internet, right? Like just being able to
Physicality
have
should
some connection.
physicality should never be a barrier to entry. It should never be, and thinking about it now, I don't even need to look up the statistic. I
Yep.
guarantee if there's a statistic, the statistics out there, the farther you live away from school, the worse off you are. Like the worse you are. Look at the students who are the most successful in school, not in life, but just in school. The kids who get the best grades are the ones who live the closest to the school.
Well,
It has to be. I mean, I'm thinking about it now. I had to take a train, a bus, a train, and then another bus to get home every day. Like I
oh
was doing
man.
my
Wild.
homework on the buses there and back because that's the time that I had where kids who live near the school could be at home with their parents doing the homework. I had to leave an hour earlier and get home an hour later.
Well, and even
Yeah, it
thinking
definitely
about like
messes with you.
you said you spent time in prison. Like imagine being able to access people there to give them more personal, immersive, face-to-face opportunities for education, for work advancement,
Oh
like
yeah,
to
for
be able to
sure.
invest in something that grows them, right? And potentially, shoot, man, like, being able to provide for a family member, being able to actually engage in a meaningful way with a community of people if you just had access to, again, like, because the goal is maybe you don't have your own computer in whatever scenario you're in. You got to share a computer, right? So you can't
Yeah.
necessarily download all the apps you want to, like just go to the link, right? Go to the link and you're already immersed in the classroom, right? You can just log in with your profile, whatever it may be. Like, again, the goal is accessibility, right? And the
The
more we remove these barriers to entry, the more we can get all of the people into an experience. And that's what adds value is when more people can contribute and we can better represent, the people that want to be a part of this more immersive community.
you could create a whole you can create a whole ecosystem in Passage where it's just a visiting room allowing inmates to interact with their family in a
Yeah.
digital world because then there could be supervision at a very low cost by the prison administration
Right.
because I understand why they have supervision. Half the guys in there were running their mafia businesses and their drug businesses while I was
Right.
inside, so I understand why the supervision needs to be, but unfortunately the rest of us fall into that bucket, and that's why recidivism is so bad because
Mm,
there is no vocational training. There's halfway houses are a mess. There's no supervision. You're lucky if you get a good probation officer. It's terrible. I mean,
yeah.
the barrier to not going back to prison it's impossible. Most people go back,
Yeah.
but that could
Yeah.
change. And I really see this type of stuff being the immersive, and then throwing in the crypto and the token economics part of it, allowing people to earn some money and then know
Right.
or earn something and not have and knowing that they have that on the other side is really wonderful.
Well, and for us, again, it's virtual workspaces as well. I mean, we've been talking with teams who want to be onboarded. Hopefully, within the next quarter, we're onboarding teams into our virtual workspaces, which will allow people to have that kind of immersive communication without a centralized, building that they have to go to. With all the cost overhead that goes into that and the commute, whatever it may be, people losing time with their family, losing time in their passions. Um, and so work opportunities for as well being available to people in whatever situation,
Yep.
whether you're just in an underserved area, whether you're in prison, wherever you are, like giving people opportunities via this portal, right? Because it's more accessible. And again, man, like even thinking about that scenario you're talking about
Yeah.
where like we don't want people we'll give people advancement personal opportunities so they're not getting back into a bad situation or whatever that may be. The way that we got to where we are in this software is just thinking about humans as humans, right? Thinking about how do people actually interact, how do people want to communicate face to face, like not this kind of arbitrary like stacks of video blocks types of communication, but like I want to turn and I want to jump and I want to like wave and I want to actually be able to hear where you are around me and like get some physical
I
presence
want you
from
to see my
people.
body language. I want to see
Right,
your body
exactly.
language.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Especially as an Italian, man. We gotta move.
Yeah, but without the barrier to entry of having to have special hardware, right? Having to have like your hand controls for your VR headset and whatnot, like to get this sense of immersion. And the stuff that we're building, that we're moving toward, again, I mean, with nothing but a simple laptop or iPad with a webcam, there's so much that we can do to enable that immersion that we've already done, and a lot of landmarks that we have. And again, it's just thinking about humans as humans, right? Instead of as like kind of this arbitrary unit you can plug into any system you want, put on a conveyor belt through an education system, or put into an arbitrary, Zoom configuration. And again, I think that really, because that's our mindset and kind of our ethos going into solving the hardware problem, is thinking about people, it naturally has these beneficial results for being able to humanize people in any particular situation, right? Like thinking about how can humans grow, or what would naturally benefit people in these different situations.
That's what I'm trying to figure out every day.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
the beauty of
the interesting part too is that crypto has started to move towards this direction of like artists are now actually seeing a huge explosion of opportunity because you have NFTs. But the question that always gets put to people, especially when you look at, again, the projects that are just art right now, is, well, okay, why couldn't I just copy this and do like the whole JPEG, controversy, right? So fundamentally, if you give those NFTs utility, automatically the game changes. So what is an accessible way to give utility to those who, or give the opportunity for utility to those who mostly artistically leaning? So if you essentially create a asset, which, if you have any 3D modeling experience, even if you do a 2D asset, the 2D asset can be a 2D image that people put, in their space. If those are on our marketplace, or at least IBC enabled, you essentially automatically have utility, because right away people can use your stuff within their virtual worlds if they have those assets. So, or you can use those assets to then license that asset to other people, so that they don't have to own that specific one; they could rent it from you.
Could see a lot more stories getting told this way. Well,
yeah.
Arel Avellino, Lex Avellino, thank you guys for taking the time and blowing my mind on Untold Stories today. It's great to see that you guys have gotten this far. Usually, I'd be talking to someone who has done what you guys have done, and they're part of some mega corporation or big VC-backed startup, and they're not even close to doing so. After this show, you're going to see a lot of more influx of people learn about what you're doing. But don't change the websites, because they're great. I love it.
Okay, guys. We're going to leave the website. It's going to be the same.
We'll take a vote.
Cheers. I really appreciate taking the time today. This is a longer than 1 hour show. I never do shows this long. This is awesome.
It's such a pleasure, brother.
Dude, thank you so much, Charlie, for having us on, man.
Yeah, for telling these stories,
you're a great
man.
conversationalist.
All right, cool. I'll see you guys later.
Good spots.
Peace, brother.